pick these interesting weather situations. I was looking back, and it was actually April 4th, so it was what, 7 months ago I was here. It's like, wow, did that time go by that fast? Holy cow! So, but anyway, thank you once again for the invitation to do the weather briefing. Enjoy these. I usually try to come once a semester, and we're going to talk about a few. I wish I had about an hour to really delve into things. I know we've got time constraints, but these are some of the things I always like to at least scratch the surface on a little bit of Climo stuff, kind of, where we've been so far this year, the normals, highest, lowest, precip, that kind of stuff, snowfall, some of the stuff that you gotta know this stuff going into a forecast. Geography and climatology, those two things are so important when doing a forecast for any place. Really before you start moving forward, you got to know your Climo and your geography. So we'll do a little bit of that. I have just a short little piece. We're going to give some late fall / early winter forecasting tips, mostly geared towards central PA here, and then obviously the current and upcoming weather. So here's some kind of a summary here of where we've been so far this year. The highest temperature year to date. We did have a couple of hot days back in July, but this place is so tough to reach 90, as we know. Anybody that's spent any time around State College in the summer, especially when it's wet, it's just very tough to even reach 90. The biggest ridges, and it's like we'll get 88s, 89s, and it'll stop. But we did get 91 actually on 2 days in a row, the 20th and 21st of July. The lowest way back January 30th, a -5. And I know there was a stretch in there a number of years where it was tough to get it below 0 here, and with the highest heat building and everything, kind of the construction around here, it really has changed the dynamics, the micrometeorology right around Walker Building here on campus. I know back when I was going to school, way back in the Neanderthal days of Penn State, when that didn't exist, and we used to get the drainage wind late at night, early in the morning, across what we call the White Course, the golf course there. You could actually feel it coming across Atherton Street at like 4, 5, 6 in the morning. You feel that drainage wind. Everything is just kind of discombobulated now. So anyway, this is the new norm. As far as the departure for the year, through yesterday, 0.7 of a degree above normal. So we're close, but just a little bit on the plus side. The total precip, again, through the 3rd, is 36.24. The normal to date is 33.73. It's interesting that through sometime in September, we had that dry stretch in late summer and going into early fall. It was pretty dry. We were below normal precip, and we were very close to normal, give or take like half an inch or so. And then we had a pretty wet October, and then that put us up above normal for the year, but nothing like it was last year at this time. Last year to date, very interesting. The highest 91, lowest was 1 below. The departure through the 3rd of November of last year, very similar to now, 0.6 of a degree. Total precip for that time through the 3rd, 54.18, and we were on track for a record year. That was just an incredible amount of precip. I don't know if we'll ever see it, and we smashed the record. I mean, it wasn't even close. We just smashed it by several inches last year. Last year, 2018, the first trace of snow occurred on the 20th of October. Now, anybody see any snowflakes last week? I know officially were you around town, out of town? Like,
I was traveling up Curtin Road.
Okay.
So it was on campus. It was probably 24 flakes.
Okay.
It wasn't many.
Did it go down? Like, did you tell Bill? Did it go down as?
It looks like it didn't. I didn't.
It didn't go down.
I didn't see it on the Climo record. I live out on the other side of Bellefonte, east of Zion, and I was out taking my walk that morning, and you could clearly see there was a really nice snow shower off to the northwest.
What day was this?
what day was that? That was
Thursday.
Thursday.
Thursday was the day the front came through with the.
Friday morning.
Friday morning, right?
Friday.
It was Friday morning. Yes. Right. We just missed the October. Yeah, Friday
Yeah,
morning.
November 1st, because that's the earliest I've ever seen snow.
Yeah, and off to the northwest on Bald Eagle Ridge, what they call Purdue Mountain, out that way, and over toward the Allegheny Front. It was, I mean, it was a nice snow shower, and even where I was in the valley, there were some very noticeable snowflakes. There was some graupel. There was some rain. It was kind of like a mixed bag of everything, but definitely
Yeah,
I would have put
I got
that
too.
down as my first official. Now the first measurable snow last year on the 9th of November, there was 0.2 of an inch. And then of course just, short time later we had that big early season snow last year of almost a foot of snow on the 15th. Now it's interesting, today 55-37, that's today's normals, and they're still, you got to keep up with them because like every 3 days they drop a degree. They're like, it's so easy to get out of touch this time of year with the normals. They're changing so quickly. It's about every 3 days they drop a degree. It kind of starts to level off a little bit. The drop is less as you get into December and obviously into January. But in 1 month from today, 42-28 is where we are. So things to keep in mind here. These are, I just kind of put together a handful of some tips here for forecasting for Central PA, State College area at this time of the year.
Really depressing.
And Marissa's like laughing, but knowing how true it is. The point number one there, when we're on the fence and in doubt, should we lean a little sunnier, a little cloudier? If there's any doubt, lean toward clouds, and like probably 90% of the time you're going to be right this time of the year. For one thing, the sun angle is lower, and everything else being equal, the same amount of cloud cover, the same amount of clouds filling the sky on a November or December day versus a August or a May or a June day with a much higher sun angle, it's going to look cloudier. But there's so many ways that we could be cloudy or stay cloudy around this part of the country. So lean toward clouds, and when there's doubt, you're going to be right most of the time. Now with that, more cloudiness, more breeze, more wind, things are getting more stirred up, you got more flow. Your occurrence of your late night, you remember the fingers of fog, we see that in August, and see when you guys start your fall semester, and how many mornings, with the clear skies, light winds, and the radiation fog you see in the valleys, the fingers of fog. That is going to be less and less now going forward, just because there's more clouds, more wind, and so forth. Really important, being a forecaster, whether you're working for NWS, whether you're working in the private sector, you never ever want to miss the boat on your first significant snowfall. So important, because it's the perception. You sort of set the tone for the whole season, and it's like, you guys didn't even get the first one right, we're going to trust you for the rest of the winter. So it really is important to try to hit that first significant snowfall. You can't make the assumption this time of year that, we're going to mix to 850. Look at the 850s. Look, I hear that all the time. A lot of times with younger forecasters, I say, did you look at a sounding? Did you look at a model sounding? 850 is irrelevant. It's all going on below that, 900 or 925 or 950. It doesn't matter what's going on up at 850. So check your model soundings. This time of year, in the summer months, you could kind of target 18 and 21Z. 21Z now, it's an hour away from getting dark. So you really have to just look at that. Look at the whole sequence, but 18Z is a good one to focus on. And a good rule of thumb, and you could beat Moss numbers on and again, this is dry. There's no precip. So this is not going to work when there's snow or rainstorm taking place. But good rule of thumb for State College. If it's mixing to 900, you add about 9 or 10 degrees C from this. Just drop down and add that, and that's a pretty good estimate of your high temperature. For 925, about 7 or 8 degrees, and at 955, maybe 6 at most C added on top of that, and that's again a good estimate for your high temperature. Now for sea level places or near sea level, Philly, New York, so forth, so on and so forth. The I-95 big cities, it's usually about 2 degrees C more. And then for the higher elevations, like at Johnstown or Bradford, it's a little bit less, maybe a degree or two less. Lake effect, we'll talk a little bit about that in the next point, but watch those Lake Huron connections, fans. This is not a lake effect place, but there are some rare circumstances when you get a connection from a band that comes down from Lake Huron, crosses Lake Erie, and it comes right down, and you actually, you could trace the streamline, and sometimes in a very narrow strip we can do pretty well, either here or very close to here, and there could be an enhanced amount of snow from that. Obviously the 13 degrees C rule, that works magic, golden. Just a couple of weeks ago I remember looking at a satellite, I mean there was no precip even, but just clouds, and I didn't know what the lake temperature was, I didn't know what the 850 was yet, I didn't look at that, but I looked at a satellite picture and I saw a bunch of convective looking clouds over Lake Erie. Sure enough, I checked it and there was about 14 degrees C difference. So, I mean, that rule is so great, and so just watch that, monitor your lake temperatures. Cyclonic versus anticyclonic, huge difference in the amount of lake effect snow that can happen. If you have low heights or falling heights, or best, low height environment where the heights are actually falling, they're some of the best setups. Obviously, you have your multi-band versus one focus band. That's a whole nother thing right there. But your good rule of thumb, if you want a nice focused one band, heavy, crazy band of lake effect snow, you like to see the flow pretty well aligned. You don't want a whole bunch of shear because it'll just rip the bands apart. If you have a short wave or a vortex coming through at the time, that certainly helps a lot. And obviously you got to look at the trajectory. I did pick a few sites, and you could keep going on with this and add one after another after another. If I were forecasting for Erie, the flow I'd like to see is 260. When I start to see it going around to 265 or 270, it sets up just south of them. The Erie gets missed. If it goes around, too much in the other direction, if it goes too far southwest, then it's north of there. Buffalo, about 240, give or take. That's a good guide. For Syracuse, if you're forecasting for the airport, I like 290. If you're forecasting for Syracuse City, which is south of the airport, it's more like 300, 295 to 300. Early snows, again, remember, we got a warm ground, relatively warm ground out there. You got to factor that in, obviously, for road accumulations and pavement accumulations and so forth. Time of the day. The ocean is still pretty warm yet. I know I haven't checked today yet the Atlantic City water temperature, but it's still, as of last Friday, it was like 61 or 62 degrees. So the ocean's still out there, and you got a lot of source of heat yet. And that's why east of the mountains and closer to the Atlantic seaboard, it's so tough to get early snows because of the warm ocean. But as we saw last November, it does happen. It can, and it does happen from time to time. Stability, watch your stability. If you see a sounding, and it's a really unstable atmosphere, your critical thickness is not going to be your standard, whether it's 540, 543, whatever you're looking at for a location. Like around here, 542 or 3 is a good guide. 540, that's okay. Sometimes it's a little higher. It's not going to be that when it's very, very unstable early in the season. Your critical thickness is going to be lower. Watch the tilt of the upper level troughs. Again, very important. If it's a positively tilted trough, you don't get a lot of development. You get a quicker press of the cold air, less surface development. If it goes, the times to really watch are those times when it goes positive, then it's neutral, then it goes around the negative tilt. It's changing over time. They're the ones to really focus on. The track of the vortexes and the surface lows, obviously, that's going to be very important. I know I've seen this over and over again here in State College, that the track of the vortex, let's say we have a case where it's relatively mild, or it's mild enough and it's raining, and so the debate is it going to end? Is the rain just going to end, dry out, and then we get a few, garbage flurries afterwards and nothing really to speak of? Or is it a rain changing to snow situation and we actually end up with even a small accumulation? The key there is the track of the vortex. And I've seen it over and over again. If it tracks right over us, or certainly better yet, just to the south of us, then very likely we're going to get a changeover to snow and we'll get some accumulation. If that vortex goes just north of us, like just north of I-80 or so, then the other scenario happens. The rain ends, dries out, wind goes northwest, gets colder, and we get a few lonely flurries, and that's all she wrote. Now, once the cold air is entrenched, and anybody that's spent any time in Happy Valley here has seen this over and over and over again. Once it gets this time of year and well into the winter, all through the winter, it's very, very tough to dislodge it. I've seen so many times where, that it's 32 here and it's like 58 in Pittsburgh, and it's the warm air surging up the coastal plain, and we're stuck back here, nothing to route it out, and we'll actually get our highest temperature after the fropa, after the occlusion goes through. The wind goes west, starts to stir up. You watch your thermograph, it's like, oh, there it goes up to 41 or 2, and then it starts to fall back. And that's our high temperature behind the front. I mean, it's over and over again. It happens, and it's going to happen again. So here's a little, the brief overview before we go forward with some of the maps. Hopefully we have some time at the end for the animator. If not, we could definitely, even after the video is over, we could discuss some of this. Pretty tame weather pattern in the short term, the next few days, then a very interesting setup later in the week. We are at a colder than normal pattern for a while. I mean, we're definitely suppressed temperatures here for the next week to 10 days at least. Whatever happens, later in November, we'll see. There might be some change in the pattern. It kind of goes back toward normal, but definitely on the cold side of things for the next week to 10 days, if not more. Most of the time, next couple of days dry, not a whole lot going on there. Could be a shower. We're looking at light rainfall amounts, 100th or a few hundredths or whatever. No big deal. Tomorrow, the morning, midday seems to be the best timing of that shower. And then the most significant precip, like let's say in the next 5 or 6 days, looks to be sometime later Thursday and Thursday night, and that could end up being our first measurable snow of the season. And it does look like our coldest night of the season so far. Regardless of how this all unfolds on Thursday, the coldest night of the season is going to be Friday night. Officially here on campus, 27, I guess, has been our lowest, and I gotta say we're probably looking at 20, at least 25, 4. It could be 22, and almost for sure there's going to be some teens that show up in the outlying areas. I know I live in a really cold spot, a real good radiation and cooling spot, and on this past weekend, what was that? I guess it was Friday night, Saturday morning, I was 21.5 near the house, and I have a thermometer set up down at the shed, which is like away from my house. It's a little bit of and it's not much, it's just a slight drop, in where it is. It just drops just a little bit, and it's a really good drainage spot down there, and I had 20.1 at my shed the other morning. So I'm sure that I'll be in the teens. That's almost a given. I will be in the teens come Friday night. Here's a little setup here that we're looking at. Just a quick, this is just basically today. We're going to kind of focus on 12Z today. There's your upper level winds, 250. Nice little jet streak over the Great Lakes area, and there's a lot of wind coming down through western Canada there. There's the 500 millibar, again 12Z today. But you can just kind of see where that general troughiness wants to be. There's a lot of flow there, and you can really see where the kind of upper Midwest, the upper northern plains into the Great Lakes, that's really kind of the area where the core of this cold is going to be. And you got this nice max there that's in the upper Midwest, and that'll be our our weather maker tomorrow. Again, pretty dry. It's operating on dry air. There's not going to be much. There's your 700. Again, 12Z today. There's your 850s, and you could see in the short term, this is a snapshot this morning, and you could see that we are right now as we speak, probably why we have some of the clouds out there out the window. We're in some warm advection now. There's a little bit of warm advection going on. Air mass is, it's cool, it's chilly, but you got relative warmth, if you want to call it that, in the short term. But then look at that really cold air starting to show up there in central to western Canada. There's our surface map as of 14Z this morning, 14 or 15Z actually this was. And this is looks a lot worse than it really is. This is every 10th of a millibar. But very easily you can see the high drifting off the New Jersey coast, and pretty good southwest flow, and you can kind of see where your next front is, where the pressure trough is back here in the Midwest. That's a front that's getting here tomorrow. Here's a composite radar from earlier today. Again, not a whole lot of really big areas of significant precip. A lot of the country, when you percentage-wise, and some of this obviously is probably Virga, not even reaching the ground. A good chunk of the country really is not. It's not preciping all that much. There's your satellite. Again, the driest areas pretty much across, other than a little bit of stuff in the southeast. Most of your cloudiness tending to be more across the northern half of the country, and especially up in the Great Lakes with that system coming through the front. There's a surface plot. This was 15Z this morning, and you could kind of see where your wind shift is out there. A little bit of a pressure rise. What do we got? Dew points here. It's pretty dry. You step outside, and yeah, we're going to get up near 50 or maybe low 50s this afternoon at best. But you could really feel it's a dry air mass. I'm starting to feel it too with the. Gotta get some hand cream on. You really start to feel that. Of course, you're in a heated room inside, and then the relative humidity drops way down, and so that dryness really starts. And for that reason, that's why I don't expect a whole lot with this front coming. There's really not much of a moisture source there. Now we're going to focus on later in the week with this setup. This again, snapshot off of the Euro is the 0Z run of the Euro for Thursday evening, 7 p.m. 0Z Friday. And there's a pretty nice max. That's a nice short wave coming down through the western lakes, the upper Midwest there. At that point, it's still probably positive to maybe neutral tilt at best, but it definitely is somewhat of a strengthening system, and if you continue on from there, it strengthens even more as it heads into the northeast, into New England during the day on Friday. But you've got some pretty good height falls coming with that later on in the week, and that's what's going to be our setup here for an interesting late Thursday night event. There's your 250, and this was kind of caught my eye here. This is, again, 0Z Friday off of the Euro, but there's your right rear quadrant of this jet streak here that's going across far northern New England, southeast Canada. But this area here, you're definitely in that right rear quadrant, so you're going to get some upward motion, just jet-induced upward motion from that. And then here is a snapshot here at 6Z, middle of the night, 1 a.m. on Friday, off of the Euro, the surface. And really what's going on is you've got one front coming tomorrow, Tuesday, not a big deal. This other front is coming on Thursday, and then it waves up with the energy, with the height falls, the PVA, the upper level energy, and the jet dynamics there. You're going to form a wave on that front somewhere to the south of us. It'll be a weak wave initially, and I think over time it'll strengthen some. It just depends on how quickly, how strong that max is, the Vort max, and the tilt of the trough and how much deep, that'll determine how much deepening you get of that surface wave. But definitely there's room for some kind of a wave, a disturbance to be along that boundary as it comes through, as it pulses through here Thursday night. But it's a fast moving, it's not going to close off, it's not going to hang around, it's a quick hitter. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen very quickly in like a 12-hour period, and it's gone. Because that's the snapshot at 6Z, and then if you fast forward, look at where it is at 18Z 12 hours later. So it does deepen some, but it zips on out really quickly. And so we're just left with a northerly flow of pretty darn cold air. What do I see? 528. I see a 522 just north of here. They are some pretty impressive thicknesses that are going to be here. And you know, you look at where the high is at 1032 high at that time, and of course that looks like it's building eastward. That high is going to end up heading probably right into the eastern Ohio Valley, or maybe toward West Virginia, I think by Friday morning, or by Saturday morning, Friday night. So it looks like it's a really good setup for us to get very cold here Friday night. These are some of the gridded numbers off of the Euro. And again, you know, you look at the next couple of days, it's not too big of a deal. You look at your 2 meters, and probably today, yeah, probably could be our mildest day, but we're still below normal. But you know, you look at your 850s, not anything really impressive until you get to the end of the week, and you could really look at everything crashing here as you get into Friday. Basically, we're spending most of the day Friday here with 850s of like minus 9, minus 9.5, almost minus 10. Probably bottoms out Friday night, but there's some pretty impressive 850s. Now look at your thicknesses here. If you guys could see the thicknesses as we bottom out here. This Friday at 18Z, 524 thickness. Looks like the lowest on the Euro. Now also of note, and again, QPF is QPF and one of the least reliable parts of a model. You really have to, especially this far out, take it with a grain of salt. But I was looking at some of the maps, and if you just extrapolate it out, I mean, the Euro is probably the beefiest with the precip come Thursday night. I mean, it's forecasting, you know, it's probably over a half an inch of liquid that it's forecasting here. Right. Now some of that is probably going to be either a mix or maybe just a chilly rain at first because of the boundary layer issues. But as it cools and as you get the upward motion coming at night and you get a changeover, it will go to snow. And then the question is, you know, do we have an hour or two of some light snow and it tries and it struggles and we get a little coating, or does it go to town quickly and, you know, we actually end up with maybe a few or several inches of snow come Friday morning? I think it's a very good chance, since Penn State officially did not have on the record that first, you know, occurrence of snow. It will happen. The question is and I think it's a very good chance, not only your first snowflakes, but your first measurable. Now the question is it going to be a tenth or two, or is it going to be a couple of inches or more? So I think that's a key. That's something to watch as we head through the week. Now this is the GFS Ensemble. Rather than looking at just GFS, I looked at the GFS Ensembles. It's not quite as beefy with the precip, but it still has, you know, like close to 1/3 of an inch QPF, and it's also very impressive, maybe even more impressive than the Euro on the 850s. I see a lot of like minus double digits come Friday and Friday night there on the GFS Ensembles. Your thicknesses are comparable, you know, in that mid 520s range, but that's pretty impressive. And again, it's also got a decent amount of precip, not as much as the Euro, but it's still fairly beefy. Now that is the Euro sounding snapshot 0Z Friday. So that's Thursday evening. Look at how moist the entire column all the way up to the moon is saturated. You know, your 850s, everything. This is all cold. That's a snow sound. The question is, you know, what actually is it going to be right down at the very bottom, you know, in your boundary layer. and right down to the surface. This is 6Z. So you could also, you could tell even by now, you see like once you get to, above 700, it's starting to dry out a lot. And then you go like to the next, if you look at 9Z and 12Z, you can just see the whole thing drying out quickly. So it's going to happen. It's a quick hitter. Whatever's going to happen, it's going to happen in like a 6 or 8 hour period there, because then it's all over. You get the Friday, other than some flurries or maybe a couple of snow showers, especially in the morning, it's all the significant stuff is over. Then the focus by Friday is the wind and the cold, and that feels like a mid-December day or a late December day. So here's the forecast again, just wrapping things up. Some kind of a cloud-sun combo, and I'm looking out the window now, and I'd probably say there's a lot more clouds than sun, and I'm not sure about our 52. When I did this up a couple of hours ago, I thought, yeah, it's probably going to get to low 50s. Maybe we still get there. We are in some warm advection, but boy, it might be tough to get it above 50 here today. It is going to turn out mostly cloudy, or be mostly cloudy tonight. Probably stays dry, 39 for the low. Tomorrow, similar temperatures to today. I think it's pretty cloudy up through the middle part of the day, maybe early afternoon. There'll be a passing shower or two, but there's not much, a trace to a few hundredths of an inch. And that's about it. That's all we're going to generate off of that thing. By later in the day, we start to dry out some, and we might even break for a little sun. No guarantees, and if there's any doubt, just to say it's going to be mostly cloudy all day tomorrow. But I think we got a shot anyway behind this system of brightening up some tomorrow afternoon. Wednesday, you really have the next of the rest of the work week here. Wednesday's probably our best day. Overall, I'm going to lean it a little bit more toward more sun than clouds that day. Again, on the cool side, below normal, but not bad. We're going to be up close to 50, maybe just shy of that. And then Thursday, daytime, I kind of played it as, it's a chilly day. You'll probably have some sun or dim sun, filtered sun for a while in the morning. It'll cloud up, and then we have that mix of rain and wet snow, whether it's just a chilly rain and then goes to wet snow, whether it's some kind of a mix. It fights back and forth, which one's going to be dominant later in the day, maybe after 3, 4 o'clock or so. I went with a high of 44. I know some of the guidance I saw was as low as 41. To me, that seems a little too low, unless it really starts to precip like early enough in the day. I was looking at some of the gridded stuff. It was suggesting it actually could be as high as like 46 or 7 here. That might be a little bit ambitious, but I think kind of mid 40s before it precips, and then it'll wet bulb. It'll drop easily at 2 and below 40 by early evening. And then it's that time period from 6 or 7 p.m. to about 4 a.m. on Friday. That's the time to really watch as to what happens during that period. But I would think right now there's a potential for at least a small accumulation, coating, a couple tenths of an inch, something like that, and perhaps a lot more than that. I shouldn't say a lot more. This is not going to be one of those deals where we're going with a coating to an inch and the potential is a foot. I don't see that. The potential, the upper end potential, given the fact that it's an open wave, it's moving quickly, you're dealing with some boundary layer issues and so forth, and the max, I'd like to see the max a little farther south for us to do well here. So the upper potential might be like, really stretching it, might be 4 or 5. Realistically, I think it's going to end up being a coating to an inch or 2, something like that. That's my gut feeling right now, but we'll see where things go during the week. Again, the upper potential is not double digits, I don't think, here in Central PA with this one. And then Friday behind that, we got a windy, very cold day, clouds, more clouds than sun. It's going to feel like it's in the 20s. Depending on what part of the day you are, it's going to be a pretty nasty day to be outside. Snow shower too. I think it's mainly in the morning. I went with a high of only 38. I mean, geez, that's our normal high. What about middle of December or so? December, I'd have to look, but before Christmas, but definitely after the first of the month there. So that's a pretty cold day, and it's going to be way down into the 20s, the lowest temperature of the season so far, come Friday night. It will be in the teens in the outlying areas. So that, how we doing with time? That's about.
That's about good.
Okay.
Any questions for Dave?
No.
Okay. I saw the hand go up. It's you never do that in an auction. Don't scratch your head during.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Dave.